Did a Spider-Man trailer just drop? Here is my breakdown of that No Way Home motherfrickin' teaser trailer, which we've been waiting a century for, but here it is. There's just so much to say. So much to say already, such as the Sinister Six teases, the footage of Lizard in a seemingly magic prison cell, and there's all sorts. Peter running through Feast, little Easter eggs like that. So guys, I want to give my overall review of the trailer and the premise of the movie at the end, after my breakdown. I just feel like it's important because I've got quite a few thoughts, and, you know, there's a lot of opinions on MCU SpiderMan, and oh, is this just another non-independent Peter Parker movie? And I've actually got some interesting personal opinions there with my sentiments towards the vibe of this film and just as a Spider-Man movie in of itself. So as I said, stick around to the end of the video for that, but let's get into the breakdown. So fellow web slingers, the beginning of the trailer picks up with Peter and MJ sitting on a rooftop, and this is obviously after the aftermath. It's in the aftermath of the reveal of his identity as Peter Parker, because also you can see a little newspaper there that MJ is reading about Peter Parker and his spider minions. Yeah, let's just say that Mysterio kind of won in the long run here. Like, they are really crapping on him, and everyone around him, the vibes you can get in this trailer through what they depict, they've just been pulled into the spotlight that Peter is in as well. You can see this in this particular scene here with Ned, MJ, even Flash with blonde hair. He's dyed his hair blonde now in the background after they're kind of getting hounded by the public. Now in this particular scene as well, it could be a scene of where Peter immediately after the aftermath versus the scene of what we just saw with MJ chilling on the rooftop. This is maybe not necessarily a flashback, but it could just be the more context of when he attended court about it and all of that stuff, because as we do with trailers, they play scenes out of order. Like, you know, if this is him going to court, we then get scenes of him later in the police station, handcuffed and whatnot, when that would clearly come before. Now, the thing about Flash with the blonde hair in the background there, it's just interesting to see him walking in with Peter, MJ, and Ned, because, you know, it's not like him to be a supportive friend, but since he is quite a big fan of Spider-Man, I'm guessing that is why he's completely dropped that, and he's like, oh, Peter, is there anything I can do for you? But you can probably assume after Peter has fixed Spider-Point, because I don't know about you guys, this feels like the MCU's Flashpoint in a certain way. I'm obviously joking, but after Spider-Point is done and over with, you can probably assume that Flash will go back to hating Peter, since he doesn't know he is Spider-Man anymore. We also get scenes of Spider-Man swinging throughout New York with MJ being quite frightful. It's like, oh, I can't look. But not only that, I believe this scene is right after the ending of Far From Home, and this is just them swinging around when the world realizes who Spider-Man is right off the bat. So you can probably assume that this particular scene is right at the beginning of the movie. Especially the other scene of them on top of the bridge that plays a little bit later, and you have the helicopter, like, probably broadcasting the news, Spider-Man seen on top of the bridge with a random girl. Like, this is Peter Parker. And then it'll probably unfold into the police station scenes that we see in the trailer, and then the court scenes, and then, you know, just the aftermath and how everyone's getting dragged into it. But up next is that police station scene, which a lot of people are getting their detective monocles out, so to speak, because Peter here is being questioned about the drones and the death of Mysterio, since he kind of technically owns them, and it doesn't look good. So as I said, Mysterio has kind of got the one-up after his seeming death, if you know what I mean. But a lot of people are thinking that this guy here could be Matt Murdock. Now, I would love that to be. However, people are pointing out that he doesn't necessarily have the exact body type that Charlie Cox or Matt Murdock would have. This would be the perfect scene to kind of make a little bit of a cameo in there. However, yeah, I don't think that this guy is the Daredevil body type, if you know what I mean. But maybe that is just like the way the shirt is looking in this particular scene. I don't know, I'll leave that to you guys. By the way, Matt Murdock will probably appear in some way or somehow. We get a couple of scenes of MJ and Peter FaceTiming, just kind of like going through the motions of what they're currently experiencing, but MJ's kind of asking these bigger questions of, you know, isn't it kind of easier, or do you not feel relieved in a certain way? And this all comes into my perspective on this movie and how it is a relevant Peter Parker story to tell, despite a lot of the opinions out there. With what is being teased here, it's just interesting to think about how events will be going after the events of this movie, and, you know, will MJ even know? Will Ned even know? Will other people? Well, it's kind of obvious, I think, where things will go, but as I said, stick around to the end of the video. They're talking about friends, close ones being dragged into this. Peter says in the trailer that this isn't about him, it's hurting the people he loves, with these just serious repercussions in the movie being what I really adore so much about it. It makes you wonder, with the synopsis stating that Peter is forced to discover what it truly means to be Spider-Man through the events of this movie, if that the most important lesson will be that if he learns that he has to wear the mask, he will have to keep those he loves potentially separate from it, and that will be the big kind of starting Pokemon evolution into like the next Peter, if you know what I mean. We've had Peter in the MCU, but obviously quite a little bit of a different take from previous movies, and this could propel him into the Spider-Man where, you know, like what we've seen with Andrew, even though he did kind of, you know, with Gwen Stacy, but like, you know, Toby avoiding the MJ secret, it could be going into that territory moving from here on out. At this point, we see Peter looking at these like little hanging wizards, and it's inferred at least that that is what gives him the idea to approach Doctor Strange to fix all of this mess that he is in. Except when we see the Sanctum Sanctorum, it's completely frozen over. It's like frickin', I don't know, Narnia right now and there. But I don't know why necessarily, because, you know, I know we saw Bruce Banner fly through the frickin' like roof, and but it's just like, really? Like, everywhere it'd be completely cold? But not only that, considering that he can use magic to set fires just with a cast of his hand, you would have thought that you wouldn't be shoveling snow, because you could just, like, magic. Why is nobody thinking about that? Incompetent wizards. But another thing, of course, I think everyone appreciates how this is a little bit of a play on their first interactions. Like, oh, we're using our made-up names? Oh, well, I'm Spider-Man. But in this moment, they're now, you know, you can use the first name basis, Steven. Very obviously here, Peter wants to make it so that nobody remembers he's Spider-Man, so we can get through this crazy time for once and for all, and back to the way things were, where things were looking pretty good for Peter before. I mean, take away the end of Far From Home, he's got MJ, he's got his friends now. It's just like things are kind of, other than like losing Tony and stuff, they were going in a half decent direction, but in a genie kind of way. You know, be careful what you wish for, because there's this somewhat trope where if you don't ask about wishes specifically, then yeah, that's going to be an oversight that will come back to haunt you. And then we have Wong warning Doctor Strange to not cast that spell, and Strange sarcastically reassures him that he doesn't. But the feeling I did have when I first watched this, and I don't know if anyone felt the same way, and I'm not saying he wouldn't do this, but it's more like, why is Doctor Strange so eager to pull off such a risky feat of a spell? Now, maybe with Strange's characteristics, that is exactly why he wants to attempt it, but it just seems, I know he knows Peter, and as he says, you helped me save half the universe, you know? But I don't know, it just seems like such a big thing to do to help out a kid. Granted, the gravity of the situation, I'm sure Doctor Strange understands, but yeah, as I said, like, Doctor Strange, you're the kind of head of the Order. You know, are you sure you want to risk multiverse reality imbalancing level spells like this? But I guess he does it anyway, because that is what we see happen next. So in this scene, we see Doctor Strange work on that spell, which it likely includes some of Peter's hair, just like that scene from Thor, where he used a part of his hair to make him go see Odin when he was constructing that spell. That looks very similar. I wish I could add effects when I'm doing all of this. Peter is nervously rambling about not wanting MJ to forget, or Ned, which thus interrupts the spell and causes it to go a bit haywire. Hence the be careful what you wish for, because he didn't specifically ask at first to have them included in the knowledge in this post-Spider point. Yes, I know I keep calling it a Spider point. It's just a little play on Flashpoint, but do you know what I mean? It's a little similar. Now, in between this, because trailers like to do this, just insert a random ass scene and another scene, but either way, in this particular scene that we were just talking about, the trailer decides to put in a glimpse at the black and gold suit, with Peter running through Feast, of all places, which is an absolutely wonderful little Easter egg. And we may have another one later that pertains to Miles Morales. And I do love how he kind of pulls his mask off and is just running around in such a panic. I wonder if he's kind of running away from a villain in this moment, because he just kind of pulls it off. He's like, oh my god, oh my god. You can see Feast on the wall there. Just a nice little Easter egg for that. And in this particular shot, the suit looks really cool here. I mean, it just reminds me of, that's what Tom Holland's Spider-Man will look like if he had kind of a Venom or a symbiote on it, you know? But after the spell is complete, we can hear Doctor Strange talk about how they have tampered with the stability of space and time. And we have this kind of Inception-like moment with Spider-Man falling into the Inception-like abyss, and you can see Strange diving and going right after him. Now, people are mentioning that Strange is going after Peter in more of like an altercation kind of disagreement kind of way. Not like a, you're a villain, I'm a hero, I'm gonna beat you. It's more like there seems to be something that happens between them in the film. Now, I don't know, by the way. I just want to put that out there very crystal clear. I do want to tell people to not include leaks in the comments, or if you do, please put a massive spoiler tag and then allow a few spaces so it's a read more, because I haven't read the leaks. But with the train scene and Strange moving the trains like that, it does look like he's trying to apprehend Peter, and it looks like Peter is getting away from Doctor Strange when those trains are like going into a freaking, like, I don't know, little chamber. But he could be after Peter if Peter has gone AWOL to try and fix some things himself. Going off the back of that even further, we have Peter Parker here, aka Spider-Man, with a mother box. Yes, I know I keep putting DC jokes in here, but come on, it kind of looks like a little bit like a mother box. But in this moment, we see that Peter gets knocked back into his freaking soul-like astral projection form. Now, I have heard that this cube is very important to the plot of the film and with what Doctor Strange is trying to do in the movie. So Peter having this and trying to get it is what could cause that friction between them. And so we hear Doctor Strange say the multiverse is a concept of which we know frighteningly little. And this is it, ladies and gentlemen, when we get teased with the villains of the previous Spider-Man movies. Not that it was the best kept secret, but still. Here we go. And so, our first tease is of Electro. Electro returning from the Amazing Spider-Man series. Now, obviously, it's going to be different from the Electro we saw there. But you can see Peter Parker here in the black and gold suit later from this first scene that I was showing you. And he's kind of recoiling from the attacks from Electro's bolts going at him. But the interesting thing about this, and I'm 50-50 with this, but it does seem to be a little bit more than just dirt, like going up from the bolts. But here you can see that maybe, and what a lot of fans are leading to themselves to believe, that Sandman is actually protecting Peter from those blasts. It looks like maybe like the sand is kind of like going sideways, and maybe you can make out this kind of hand figure trying to block that from attacking Peter as he's trying to like duck out the way. But obviously you could say those are just like the earth like bolstering up from the attacks of Electro. But it does seem to be a bit more than that. It does seem to be some kind of particly kind of sandy obstacle in front of the bolt that is trying to cover Peter from those blasts. And to me, I kind of really like that. I mean, I know the villains we're getting in this movie, they will be like Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, but it could be like a varied version of the storyline. So it's not necessarily the end of Spider-Man 2's actual Doc Ock, but in the multiverse, another version of this character who went out in that same way, got teleported through, but it doesn't interrupt the events of the actual canonical Raimi movie that we saw. Like, that still ends that way, but in the infinite multiverse, technically speaking, there is one who could have still done something after that or something. Do you get what I mean? So these villains, albeit they are played by the same actors, it still could be, it's not like technically the identical character from that said movie. So that way, I guess it also maintains and doesn't jeopardize your headcanon for that character in the original movie, even though it's a very similar version. But up next, ladies and gentlemen, we get our look, or what a lot of fans believe to be our first look at Lizard. Now here, we see this creature being kept in this kind of magical cell, likely constructed by Doctor Strange. Now when you lighten this up, that's where you get the Lizard comments, because when probably seeing on screen, I'm brightening this up a bunch, you can see that this creature lashes towards Peter. Now I wonder what other villains could be kept in the other cells, Sinister 6 type villains maybe, but yeah, safe bet, money is on this being Lizard just bashing towards Peter, but then the magical cell just, you know, shows a little bit of that force field absorption from his blast into the wall, or the magical barrier, if you will. Also, in between all of these scenes, I am intrigued, and of course, everyone wants to just point this out, just in case it is, when you see Peter here just kind of look to the side, there's this woman in the car who, you know, it just seems like, I mean, that could be any civilian, but it's like, you're holding this shot there with that woman. I mean, the car window could just be up. Let me put it that way. So lots of people thinking, oh, is this Miles Morales' mother? Oh, you never know. You never know. Who knows? Could be foreshadowing. Could be nothing. But let's move on. And then, of course, guys, Willem Dafoe's laugh. We hear that little goblin laugh, and of course, the green goblin, little pumpkin bomb, and it looks like a ton of them go off on this bridge. Oh man, it just makes me think of what he would have been like cast as the Joker. Yeah, I know, it's just when I hear that goblin laugh, it's like, oh man. But yeah, on the actual Spider-Man front of this, Green Goblin is my Spider-Man villain, if you know what I mean. I know people like to view different main villains for Spider-Man, like who's the bigger villain for Peter Parker versus Spider-Man, but the Green Goblin is my Peter Parker's Joker, if you know what I mean, versus that of the other ones. But wow, I mean, what more can I say? There's not more too much to talk about here, because you don't see Willem Dafoe, even though there has been leaks, and yes, I have seen that other leak, and I don't really know what to say because I've seen it, but you know, pictures and whatnot. But other than that, wow. And then of course, guys, Doc Ock himself saying, "Hello, Peter." Now, obviously, there are things in this trailer that I do want to note. So when we see Peter react to that and he puts on kind of like the Iron Spidey suit, that could actually just be another Spider-Man. You know what Marvel are like with their trailers. Like, that could actually be, for all we know, Toby or Andrew. Not that it would really be Andrew in this situation. It would most likely be Toby. But they just CGI'd or, like, swapped out the body model with Tom Holland. Now, I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just saying, with scenes in a trailer like that, you should always think, or for example, they can also digitally remove characters from a scene as well. So there's all that to consider as well. Like, Doc Ock here, Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, might not even be saying hello to our Peter, but if he is, and let's just say he likely is, saying hello to Tom Holland's Peter, the reason why he recognizes him as Peter is because, as I said earlier about the different multiverse of many Alfred Molina Doc Ocks, well, one of them would recognize Peter Parker to look like Tom Holland's rather than Toby's. But that gets a bit trippy, but regardless, what a way to introduce him. It's just, this is what's making everybody so happy, you know, it really is. And it's a nice tease. Now, of course, if you were expecting to see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in the trailer, like, of course not. Like, they're not gonna do that. Like, they're just not going to. Like, I don't even need to explain why. It's self-explanatory. They don't want to give away the crowning potential cameo moments, and who knows how long they are in the actual movie. But due to the events of this film, it seems like the villains are bleeding into New York, and it could turn into a little bit of like a introduction Sinister Six type thing, if you know what I mean. So not a full Sinister Six full-blown movie, but like it could almost like be represented as one in a sense, but also with a multiverse Spider-Point, aka Flashpoint type story, if you know what I mean. Because I do believe after the events of this movie, and this goes into my, you know, overall review of the vibe of this trailer and what I feel about No Way Home as in general of MCU Spider-Man and just what this is going to be like as a Spider-Man movie, it will kind of propel things forward into Peter growing up in terms of what it forces him. The movie synopsis has come out and it says it forces Peter Parker to learn what it really means to be Spider-Man. So what could that mean? He could come out of the events of this movie being like, I can't tell MJ, and that will break his heart. Now, obviously, even Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker, like, you know, it went back and forth with that, and she knew. And that's not to say that this won't happen in 2 movies' time, if that hopefully keeps happening, but I can assume after the events of this movie, there'll be this sad, bittersweet feeling, like the events are over, but unfortunately, MJ might not remember. And, you know, it will also kind of retcon things in a sense of speaking as to that dynamic between Peter and MJ of like, oh, I'm Spider-Man, but you used to know that, but you don't know that. So now we've got that rapport of what we had before, you know? And I really like that because I think Peter will want to tell her, but also maybe I shouldn't, because he's also learned through the events of this film, his identity being public does all of this. He already has the opportunity to know what that looks like on his family, his friends, his freaking girlfriend. So as a result of that, I think he will learn quite a few lessons after the post-Spider-Point timeline is reset into a new governing one where, I guess, people won't know. Now, I think Ned should know. That's one thing I would love to know about your theories. Do you think Aunt May will know after the movie? Do you think MJ will know? Probably not. But who do you think will know? Flash probably won't. He'll go back to hating Peter. That kind of vibe. Mixing all of this in with my overall impressions, like MCU Spider-Man, I like it. I'm actually I don't know if I'll call myself a huge MCU Spider-Man fan, and I do prefer Andrew Garfield as like Spidey or like Tobey Maguire and just those movies in general. I don't prefer actually like the the TASM series movies because they've got a lot of issues, if you know what I mean. But I love Andrew, so you know what I mean. And then there's the MCU side of things, which I can appreciate this iteration, but there's also lots of commentaries over MCU Spider-Man and how, and I do agree in a certain capacity, it's like you don't have a solo Spidey film or him relying on himself because there's so many other characters. Iron Man in the first one, now we have Doctor Strange in the third one, in the second one we had Nick Fury and Mysterio, so it's like Peter's never been independent in the sense of what we've experienced in those Raimi films and also the TASM series. But that doesn't mean there's not Spidey sincerity and homage to the character that can be brought out of this, because I believe despite this being yet another film, the third film with Tom Holland, where it's not actually like a solo Spider-Man film, and even though it's sold as one, it kind of isn't, but I do feel like this film may ironically, despite what some believe, give Peter a Spider-Man story that is very relevant to him going forward as that character. With what I've been teasing and talking about already, he will learn through the events of this multiversal arse-feckery of a movie, so to speak. He'll be learning big lessons, and you know, with a movie that everyone doubted would be quite about Spider-Man and Spider-Man and Peter Parker as a person, I think contrasting that opinion, and this could actually lean into that a lot more than what people were expecting. That doesn't necessarily mean that the MCU Spidey film here, No Way Home, can't still offer a very relevant Peter Parker progression, and that's the most important thing. Fans, with all of this mess happening, with the absolute bubble cataclysmic kind of crap going on in the background of all of these characters, it's so important that they don't sacrifice Peter's development and Peter's story, and the impressions I'm getting from it through just that premise of what I've been discussing gives me faith that they can still tell that and propel Tom Holland's Spidey forward. But guys, let me know your thoughts on this trailer down in the comments below. I'm absolutely dying to hear your theories. As I said, please, please, please use spoiler tags or something if you're going to get into leaks, just to be considerate of all fans who, you know, may not want to go there. Of course, go ahead and like this video if you did enjoy it. I will be doing more MCU updates and trailer breakdowns as of when No Way Home stuff comes out. Of course, if you want to stay up to date with me, I do have a Twitter link in the top pinned comment. But web, head, and web slingers out there, I'm going to have to love you and leave you. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. And I'll see you little spiderlings, in the next video. Goodbye.